But I really don't have any regrets. I really don't. I've lived exactly how I've wanted to. I've tried my hardest every single time. I didn't win the matches that maybe I should have always won, but I really gave it my all. So that for me is enough.
Hello everybody, welcome back to The Body Serve. I'm Jonathan.
And I'm James.
This is episode 154, and Madison Keys is tired of fucking losing.
No, Sloane is. After which she lost.
I understand. But being as they are good friends, I like to think that Madison took a little bit of inspiration from Sloane's answer in the presser and sped her way to victory in Charleston.
Madison shows up in Charleston dutifully every year. It's the biggest North American women-only event. It's historic. It has a lot of delightful quirks. I unfortunately have never been. You didn't get to go this year. But it's a tournament that is important to a lot of the WTA gals, not just the Americans.
WTA gals?
Yeah, gals. Girls is a little bit demeaning. I think gals is okay.
You put a little bit of a southern inflection into that.
I feel like I'm not in good voice today. I like a little more vocal fry in my voice. Do you know what that is?
Are you soliciting compliments from the listeners?
No.
Oh no, James, you sounded amazing, sweetie. Don't worry about it.
As a podcaster, one has to keep one's voice in tip-top shape. And it's not there today.
Madison beat Tatiana Maria, Yelena Ostapenko, Sloane Stephens in the quarterfinals, a resurgent Monica Puig under the tutelage of new coach Mr. Kamau Mari, and then in the finals she beat Caroline Wozniacki.
Caroline herself had a great week. Her results have been spotty of late. Clearly she is newly dealing with this rheumatoid arthritis diagnosis. She is getting married shortly, currently on her bachelorette weekend with Serena, Nicole Gibbs, and a whole heap of other young women.
I didn't know Nicole Gibbs ran in those circles.
No, I did not know that. But Wozniacki beat Laura Siegemund, who before her ACL tear was one of the best clay court players out there. Buzarnescu, Maria Sakkari, Petra Martic, before finally losing to Madison in the final. Now, it should be said that Caroline is not a natural clay court player. And I think that makes what she does on clay impressive in its own way. Because it is clear that it is not the most comfortable surface for her.
I don't buy into those labels anymore with respect to clay court players and non-clay court players.
I don't know. Did you watch? So Caroline did a lot to beef up that forehand around the time when she was number one again and she won the Australian Open. But I think she is just more comfortable being a counterpuncher and a retriever. Like, it's just not in her DNA, right? So some of her strokes just have trouble penetrating.
Sure, but then every year we see players who we don't think of as best suited to clay having good results. Madison herself has said that she's not comfortable on clay, but she has had results herself. Mm-hmm. Making the final in Rome, losing to Serena, made the semifinals at the French Open last year. She loves Charleston. She wins the tournament this year. I think we're in a post-stereotyping era of tennis.
Okay. Madison's own vision of herself on clay is different than most people's. I think she's more down on herself on the surface than the rest of us. Because we've seen her do great things on clay. Even before the semifinal appearance last year at Roland Garros.
I actually think her game is suited to clay a little bit. She's able to get more topspin and bounce on her shots rather than just punish the ball through the court. And even the balls that she does, hit through, they get a little bit more purchase, and it makes her more formidable, I think, as an opponent. Whereas on hard courts, she can be a little bit flat. Even when she's hitting the ball well, if she's not able to hit through the opponent, it's really only one look. For Madison, I just want to say I'm pleased for her because she's somebody who's grown up under the tennis spotlight from a very young age with huge expectations on her shoulders. And in a lot of people's estimations is not where they would have thought her to be. And with that comes a lot of pressure She's one of the many at this point living legacies of the Williams sisters. You're trying to carve out a career under the specter of having all that history behind you. And you're supposed to be the next best, and it just hasn't happened. And recently, in the last couple of years, she's had a couple of high-profile failures. And with respect to Sloane Stephens, another one of the presumptive next best, kind of seen her pass her by. And also, I look at her in relation to Naomi Osaka as well, and to see where Naomi has come in such a short time and pass her by, that had to be kind of a gutting situation for her. That said, I also think back to when I interviewed Naomi in Charleston a couple of years ago, and I asked her, what do you make about the comparison between you and Madison Keys? And she resisted it wholeheartedly, full-throatedly, as much as she can be full-throated. Distancing herself from the comparison because she felt that Madison was so much more accomplished than she was at that age.
Right. She felt that Madison was already a veteran, really.
In relation to her. And now, hello, world number 1, 2-time slam champion, and Madison is now, for us, claiming a smaller clay court event as a big victory.
So Madison, since she was hailed as a possible future star, Muguruza has won 2 majors, Ostapenko won, Sloane won. A few of these were highly unexpected.
Kerber came out of nowhere, seemingly.
Right. But people in her same generation, like Sloane and Muguruza, asserted themselves first. So I think that actually beating Sloane in this event will be good for Madison after that tremendously bad performance in the US Open final, losing to her at Roland Garros without putting up a lot of resistance. It wasn't like the US Open performance, but it wasn't electrifying.
It was still straight sets, which their previous 3 matches had been straight set losses.
So the win over Sloane here, I think, is a big deal. Madison has struggled through very serious wrist injuries. I don't know, I think she has so much time.
I think it speaks a lot to her maturity to still be able to be here after going through so much. And that's not something that I think she gets enough credit for, that she is one of the more mature, younger players on tour. She carries herself like a grown-ass woman.
Now, Sloane Stephens caused a bit of a kerfuffle in the press room because she said some bad words. Apparently, some people were upset by it.
Of all the things to be upset
Of all the things
by.
in the world today to be mad about, it was perplexing to me. Sloane Stephens is finding new ways all the time to generate interest, both within the press environment and outside of it. Sloane is not always very forthcoming with press, but sometimes she just gives you a quotable moment that you can use that has a lot of mileage, and this is one of them.
She was asked, what was it about this match that made her so intent on winning?
Said, I'm tired of fucking losing. Shit sucks. She's like, oh my God. And then she apologized to her mother. But that sort of reckless abandon that Sloane occasionally exhibits, like every once in a while, is what keeps people coming back to the well with her.
Muguruza won a tournament in Monterrey.
Man, Muguruza is another one. I don't know what the hell is going on, like Madison, like Sloane, and here she is, just playing excellent tennis for a full week in Monterrey.
Beating Azarenka in the final. For Vika, this must have been a heartening week for her.
Yeah. It was an excellent week of tennis from Vika. It is so satisfying to watch her kind of play to her ability.
Unfortunately, she was injured in the final and had to retire, but she beat Angie Kerber in 3 sets in the semifinals. That's a big win.
Yeah. Angelique Kerber is probably thinking right about now, like, what the hell? Really, hard courts are where I'm going to make my money. And this bratty Canadian girl has beaten me twice. And now Victoria has beaten me in Monterrey.
I don't think she's thinking about it that seriously.
Well,
At this point,
maybe about the first one.
I don't think she can be too salty about losing to Vika.
Svetlana Kuznetsova. I'm sure many of you wondered where the hell she was. Had she retired? Is she injured? Is she training? What? She occasionally posts on Instagram some practice footage.
No, we weren't even getting that. All we were getting were photo shoots, public appearances.
We're getting a lot of like St. Petersburg Madam.
Walking Dolce. It was...
Dolce is her pit bull.
Yes. But we didn't get any tennis. That was the alarming thing for me. We weren't getting any tennis at all for months.
Almost like a Yankovic situation.
And then she shows up in Barcelona.
In Castelldefels.
Which is kind of like a suburb of Barcelona, near the coast. We looked into spending some time there, but instead we're going to go to Sitges.
Yes.
And so she practiced. She had a block of training in Barcelona, and then she went on to Switzerland in Lugano, winning 2 matches right out the gate.
Wins her opener going against up-and-comer Alexandrova, beats Timea Baczynski, whom she has never lost to, who herself is on the comeback trail and also excels on the surface, obviously.
Before losing eventually to Kristina Pliskova, the other Pliskova.
And the other Pliskova, in making the semifinals, made quite a breakthrough because her results have not been great.
So the tournaments with Madison and Muguruza, those were from a week and a half ago. Because it's been about 2 weeks since we've recorded, right? So that happened in our first week off. And then last week, we had Anisimova winning her first title in Bogota.
Anisimova beat Sabalenka pretty convincingly in the Australian Open. She has a very impressive power game. She's only 17 years old. The sky's the limit. Like, there is just no shortage of these young WTA players who are up and coming, who are ready to slay.
Speaking of, Anisimova beats Australian Astra Sharma in the final.
Which has to be one of the great names of tennis, right?
Why is that?
It's just I just love that name. Astra Sharma. It's just mellifluous.
Okay. So we have Anisimova winning in Bogota. And then we talked about Svetlana coming back in Lugano. The winner of that title was Polona Hercog, who beat the heir to Radwanska's apartment complex empire, Iga Świątek, in the final.
If we have any Polish listeners, help us. We did try really hard with that name, but it's not an easy one. It's not like Radwanska.
She's only 17 years old and blitzing her way up the rankings at this point.
Marrakech, Morocco had a lot of intrigue this week. I like this 2-week stretch in the calendar because there are so many clay and non-clay tournaments around the globe that a lot of people who are sort of off the radar get to win titles. So in the WTA, we've had, 18 different title winners at this point. There have been no repeat winners. On the ATP side... So
the folks that you're happy to see win when they normally win, when you're talking about Benoit Paire.
Well, not...
I know you're not.
Sure, Ben is, he's fine.
But I know you're not.
I'm just saying I like that these few weeks give other players a chance to shine. Benoit Paire is much heralded, is adored even, as like the hipster tennis paragon. He beat Pablo Andujar in the final. Pablo has had just a wild ride of it over the past few years. He had 3 elbow surgeries in 2016 and 2017. He was ranked in February of 2018. Last year, he was ranked 1,821. Did you know there was even a ranking that goes that high?
I did.
Well, there's not anymore.
Correct.
But there was. So Pablo has been through it. And he actually won Marrakech last year on a ranking of 1,000. So he, surprisingly, will actually lose points from reaching the finals this week. Tsonga was into another semifinal. Hopefully he won't have to play qualifying in these big tournaments anymore. And down in Houston, Texas, at the U.S. Clay Court Championships, which is normally a place where American men can shine on a surface that they don't normally excel at, Cristian Garín wins the title, a 22-year-old Chilean, beating Norwegian Casper Ruud in the final.
Only one American made the quarterfinals at the event, and that was Sam Querrey. Mr. Tennis Sandgren notched his 7th consecutive first-round loss in an ATP event since winning in Auckland to start the year. He did make the semifinals of a challenger the week before, but his streak of losing in first round of ATP events is intact. I'm happy to report.
You're happy to report.
I am happy to report.
This is totally unrelated, but have you noticed there is a rising contingent of alt-right tennis Twitter?
I must not be paying much attention to
There
it.
is. There is.
To what To what end?
I'm
What are
not
they
going
saying?
into it because...
But what are they saying?
Well, there's definitely like an incel tennis Twitter, a misogynist tennis Twitter, and these are all overlapping, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they just seem much more vocal lately.
What are they saying? That's what I want to know.
The typical thing. WTA is trash. A lot of them are exclusively ATP fans. You know, just like very abusive stuff. And I want to reiterate that is not related to Tennis Sandgren, but it did trigger my memory.
Okay.
Speaking of, Jenko Tipsarevic beat Tennis Sandgren.
Which is one of those matches that there's just no winner.
You're just like,
in our book.
Cool. All right.
And then we got treated to folks telling us, "Oh, you go listen to that interview that he did on this podcast because Jenko was so fascinating." I'm happy to say I did not listen. I didn't listen.
I don't. So okay, as like a fellow podcaster, I don't begrudge the tennis podcast for having Jenko on.
Oh, I didn't even know it was a tennis podcast.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, I didn't even know.
You're a journalist. This is of interest to your listeners, obviously, and it got a lot of play. It's just not something I'm personally interested in. Like, I'm just not going to spend my time doing that. Because he reads philosophy. Like, I just don't believe that because you've had a daughter, like, you're a reformed misogynist. I remember what he said, you know, and I don't know if he still believes it. I'm not really that interested.
Nor do I think reading is something that should make somebody interesting. Like, it's...
Okay, he's intelligent. Fine.
Or at least intelligent adjacent.
I'm not in the position to judge that. You know, I'm just not really that interested in finding out.
Okay.
So that's that. We're coming up to the Clay Masters events. Monte Carlo is the first one on the calendar. The draw obviously is packed, as every Masters event is. Rafa is a defending champion. Tell me some observations from this draw for you.
I don't pay attention to draws, really. I mean, it's just such a useless, futile exercise. That said, a cursory perusal, I was like, well, damn, there's some interesting matches earlier on. We saw that Rafa, in his quarter, he's got RBA, Stan, Dimitrov, and Cecchinato, as well as Cilic. And now, because of his strong results to start the year, Felix is in the conversation.
Right. A lot of people are looking at Felix. He could face Fognini in the third round. Felix already beat him once on clay in Rio earlier this year. And this kid played so many matches on clay at lower levels last year, won a whole heap of them. And, I mean, he is generating fans wherever he goes.
It's, of course, the first event that Rafa is playing since he had to withdraw at Indian Wells ahead of his semifinal match against Federer. That seems just like yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? But he's been practicing for a while now. He said in his pre-tournament press that he doesn't really know how to gauge where his form or his game is right now. As always, it'll depend on how he feels when he actually gets into match play. But it seems that physically he's okay. We shall see.
Yeah, I mean, he's practicing hard like he normally does. There was a mini drama within the Nadal family because Uncle Tony said Rafa is not I don't see him as a tennis player. I see him as an injured person who plays tennis. And I understood what he was going for. And some Rafa fans were upset. Uncle Tony has since apologized to Rafa for the comments and said he didn't mean it how it came out. Rafa's fine with it. It's
How
fine.
did it come out? I don't understand.
I
take it to mean that at this point, Rafa is somebody who has to manage his body so extensively and permanently that his body and the injuries that he suffered are dictating his life as a tennis player.
Yes, I think that's exactly what he meant.
And I think that's fairly simple to conclude.
And I don't think that Rafa thought twice about it.
I don't. It's alarming to me the things that folks get worked up about.
Like, people were really mad about the ATP clay preview poster about the positioning of the players, and just like, really?
See, I must have been sleeping because I only saw the adjusted one.
Yes,
where folks was like, "Well, took you long enough to fix it," and honestly, I could have sought out the original to find out, but I was like, I just can't. This is not something I can let into my life right now.
As far as the clay season as a whole, the big stories are similar to what they were the past few years. The wrinkle is that Novak Djokovic is truly back to some of his best form. He hasn't played great in his last 2 tournaments at the Masters, but he is defending 3 Grand Slam tournaments. Expect him to be a massive, massive threat at Roland Garros. The other wrinkle is that Roger Federer is playing his first season on clay since 2016. Mm-hmm. He won't be playing in Monte Carlo, but he does plan to play Madrid, Rome, and Roland Garros.
The other wrinkle is that Dominic Thiem is a newly minted Masters 1000 champion and also already one of the top 5 best players on clay.
Right.
And so we've thought of him as, well, people call him Rafa's son for a myriad reasons. But this is something that can only push him forward. Like in previous seasons, we're like, well, Thiem is the one who could really push Rafa. And he made the French Open final last year after making the semifinals a couple of times before. So we see a natural progression for him on clay, specifically at Roland Garros. And now he's made strides elsewhere. To be clear, the strides that he's made are not nearly as quick as damn near everybody expected from this guy with such prodigious talent. But it seems that potentially Thiem is on the cusp of something special this spring.
Right. And, I mean, he excels on clay every year for the past few years. But if you think of, like, the opportunities for him, he has only quarterfinals at Monte Carlo and Barcelona.
You're talking about points to defend.
Yeah. Like, only the quarterfinal. He was runner-up in Madrid to Alexander Zverev last year, but he has a first-round loss in Rome. Obviously, he's defending runner-up points at Roland Garros, but there are places to grow.
I think you're way more optimistic. Because an early,
Really?
like a pre-quarterfinal loss at the French Open wipes out everything.
Yeah.
So,
however, I will say, like, would you take, if you're Dominic Thiem, would you take another runner-up finish at Roland Garros or a victory over Nadal, let's say, in the Monte Carlo final or the Madrid final? Like, which would you rather have? Because I think one of those is very possible. He's beaten Rafa on clay multiple times. And it's usually like at one of those tournaments where it's not a shocking loss because Rafa is tired and, let's face it, like, he needs to conserve for the French Open.
at this point in his career, with what he's achieved, I don't think you take anything less than trying to beat the best in a Grand Slam final. If I'm just assuming that's what his mindset would be.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to answer that question, really. What do you think?
It's fine. No, I think you're right. Like, he's beaten Rafa on clay before at smaller, I mean, not small events, but at Masters events. He wants to beat Rafa at Roland Garros. Like, he wants that Grand Slam title.
See, I'm in the Rafa camp here. People always say, oh, if they could beat this person on their best surface, at their best, that would mean so much. I'm like Rafa. If I don't have to play this person and I can still win, I'm happy. He says it all the time.
Oh, yeah.
He's like...
No, when people say, like, the dream is to beat this person at this event, I'm saying, like, no, the dream is to not have to face that person. Isn't it?
Exactly. For me, it is.
Right. Do you think Roger Federer thinks his Roland Garros title doesn't count because he didn't face Rafa? Absolutely not.
There's only going to be a dwindling number of bitter Rafa fans who will be able to add that asterisk and caveat as the years go on.
Alexander Zverev is another one to watch on clay, obviously. The past 2 years, he's won Masters events. Last year, he won Munich. He won Madrid. He was the runner-up in Rome.
When you say someone to watch, do you mean someone to watch to see if they'll have another just absurd implosion in a moment where it should not happen?
Oh, Jonathan.
Because this has been the story of his career thus far.
Not,
in the big moments.
Not his
in the big
career.
moments at the slams.
No, not his... Okay.
At the slams.
This isn't a Roland Garros preview. This is just a clay season preview. He's been in, I would say, maybe a mini slump over the past few months, right? But this guy can excel at Masters events like crazy. Mm-hmm. I felt like 2 years ago when he won, I don't know, Rome, I think? It felt like it was coming out of nowhere on this surface. So I wouldn't be surprised if he won one of the big ones here.
I'm increasingly less sold on Zverev, especially in the last 12 months where we've seen, for the first time really, so many of the younger ATP players step up to the fore. For a while, even though he's still so young, he was the one who was doing all these big things.
Well, and he's still ranked number 3.
I'm not taking that away from him, but now we have Tiafoe, Shapovalov.
Tsitsipas is in the top 10.
Felix is on the come up. There are all these young players who are not afraid of doing big things and have done big things. And I think that maybe that has shook him a little bit.
It's
and
possible.
Even from a non-tennis results perspective, just from occupying a place of prominence in the fandom's imaginations, Tsitsipas has totally supplanted him as far as the young ingenue heartthrob kind of thing. And I think that shit matters to these young guys.
I think it's possible that like the tastemakers' opinions have shifted a bit. Like you said, they may have moved on from Zverev, at least for the moment. Like they're waiting for him to take the next step.
And superficially, I think folks have seen that for a lot of these young guys, they have charisma that feels authentic. That feels that it's not contrarian, that it's not just nasty for shits and giggles' sake, which is a lot of what Zverev's aesthetic is.
I mean,
it's a more varied field for the young guys, and I think he now has to not only find his place on the tennis court amongst this group, but also in the branding of himself going forward, because that's part of the equation for these young kids. This generation that spend so much time on social media cultivating their fan bases through just crazy stupid shit.
No, personality is extremely important. If Alexander's charisma is based on the fact that he's a little prickly, I think that's fine.
I thought you were going to say because he's a little prick.
No.
I was a little bit worried there for a second.
I did not say that. He is a little...
You did not.
He's a bit prickly.
Yes.
I think his fans can admit that. I don't think that necessarily has to be a bad thing as a star. I mean, look at Jimmy Connors, look at even Andre Agassi when he was young. But he was exploding with star power. Like, that's the difference, right?
And there's also the eye test of the actual game itself.
Alex has a game that wins majors, period. Do people find it interesting? Maybe not. Does that matter? No. Marin Cilic has a game that wins majors, but I mean, are people flocking to watch his style?
He has a game that won a major.
Okay, fine. I'll take the point of information.
I'm just saying, Zverev is at a bit of a crossroads now, if I'm to be incredibly harsh about it.
It is harsh because he's practically a baby in the life cycle of men's tennis. Novak Djokovic will most likely extend his already massive lead at number 1. The best results he has to defend from last year were a semifinal in Rome and quarterfinal in Roland Garros, where he lost to Cecchinato. Would anyone be surprised if Novak won one of these Masters on clay?
That's a silly question. I assume it was rhetorical.
Right, exactly. I mean, would anyone be surprised if he won Novak Slam 2.0 and won Roland Garros? I wouldn't.
Still the reigning king of clay, forever
If
and
healthy.
always.
If healthy.
Still, forever and always, is Rafael Nadal. And you say if healthy, but like the only way that really comes into question... See, I don't even know. Like, when he had his struggles in, 2016 into 2017? Like, that was more a matter of confidence. It surely was injury-related as well.
Right, but do we often see him retiring from those March tournaments? Sometimes maybe he'll take one off, but he's won Indian Wells a bunch of times. It was kind of alarming to see the injury factor come in so early in the season. Last year, it happened at the Australian Open. He retired, and then he took a lot of time off before clay. This was different to me because it's like, okay, in March, I'm having some serious pain in my knee, but in April, I have to start defending this shitload of points.
See, I don't think it's that serious. It's the tendonitis. He knows how to deal with it.
But it's unpredictable.
It's unpredictable, but we saw him in that second set in Indian Wells against Khachanov, was in the quarterfinals when it first reared its head, and he looked very bothered by it.
Yeah.
And then he kind of figured that, well, I'm not going to make it any worse. I'll be okay in this match. Then he just seemed precautionary. I don't see if Rafa were super seriously injured to the point where you're worrying about, is he going to be okay for this swing? He would not have been practicing like he has been for the last few weeks. He would not be in Monte Carlo. Rafa at this point would not sacrifice the French Open to play in Monte Carlo as much as he loves it. Like there are goals, and the clay court goal is always in Paris.
Yeah, yeah.
So the fact that he's there and he's practicing, I don't think the knee, unless it comes up again while playing, is going to be an issue. I think he's okay at the moment.
Okay. Some coaching changes going on. Dominic Thiem is on a break from Gunter Bresnik. They've been together forever. Denis Shapovalov. I was very surprised by this. He has moved on from Rob Steckley, who is a Canadian.
I think you have written here Canadian bro.
He is definitely a bro. He did coach Lucy Shafajova for years, many years. Lucy made the Roland Garros final against Serena Williams under the tutelage of Rob Steckley. Dennis and Rob seem to be getting along famously. Dennis became a young MC under Rob's tutelage.
Oh my God.
Well, I say that because Rob Steckley was a big part of all those videos, right? Has been a big part of Dennis's social.
It may not be acrimonious.
No, I don't think it is. I was just surprised to see that split.
We saw that Fabrice Santoro had been working with Milos Raonic. We now know that he's been added to the dossier of coaches of Milos Inc. for the rest of the season.
I love that Milos will work with any accomplished coach or player. Like, it does not have to be someone who plays a similar style of game to him. He is just out there to learn, to gain knowledge. Could Fabrice and Milos be any different in game style?
You're just killing it with the rhetorical questions this episode.
God, that's such a terrible trait. I'm really going to stop that.
I'm just sitting here like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to say?
Right.
What do you want me to say?
That is a conversation killer, a rhetorical question. I'm so sorry.
You've been very interested in this Patrick Mouratoglou interview that happened, and for the life of me, I don't understand.
I wouldn't say very interested.
No, you have been, because...
I would say annoyed.
6 of one or half a dozen of the other. Pick your poison.
Since
You've
I've
had a lot to say to me privately.
I always have a lot to say about everything. So far, I have not been very intellectually stimulating for you during this recording session. So, what could be more stimulating than Patrick Mouratoglou? Intellectually.
Lord, I had not read this interview until right before recording. So I'd been listening to you talk about it and tweet about it, but I didn't know exactly what was said. And I read it and I was like, well, he has a fair few good points, to which you were immediately riled and ready to take me down. I had to shout you down and be like, save it for the podcast.
Yeah, so we're saving it. Patrick gave an interview to George Belshaw at Metro UK. Patrick always gives good quotes. There is no denying. Patrick is a good interview because he likes to talk, and he'll give you a lot of substance. It's not just the typical soundbite here and there. Like, he wants to talk about serious stuff.
It's not trite stuff. He has opinions about everything, and he shares them.
Right. Patrick I had talked about a whole slew of things, but really the issue was, where is the state of tennis, and how do we move forward? How do we grow the sport?
In relation to other sports that are very topical, that get people talking, that has a lot of engagement from younger demographics.
Yeah.
And as a macro view of the state of tennis, it's a legitimate concern. As to how you deal with that on a micro level to fix it, if you assume that there is a problem, that's where all these disagreements come in.
Patrick presupposes that tennis is suffering internationally, that it's in decline, and that the average age of tennis fans is growing. His math is a little bit, I would say, fuzzy. He's not really clear about how averages work, but
Why do you say that?
He said the average age of tennis fans now is 62, and in 10 years it'll be 72. It's not exactly how statistics work.
Sure.
But no, what I was going to say is that the point is not lost on me. That the average viewer of tennis is maybe not as young as the average viewer of NBA basketball, for example.
But see, I don't even think it's a matter of dismissing and say, okay, it might not be. I think it's absolutely a huge gap between them. If you think about who is interacting on tennis Twitter, which is where we get a feel for a lot of the things that's happening, a lot of these folks are older, and by that I mean our age and older, which is ancient.
Oh my God.
Which is ancient for social media.
We are still millennials. Advertisers are trying to capture us.
Be that
18 to 49 demographic.
Okay. Be that as it may, you still have a lot of 40, 50, even 60-year-olds that we interact with on a regular basis on Twitter regarding tennis.
Which I think is great. Patrick doesn't.
Absolutely. But that's not growing the game. Like tennis is in a crisis to where cricket was before the advent of T20 cricket.
Cricket? Isn't cricket like the second biggest sport in the entire world?
No, but prior to 2005 or so, it was a matter of like, how do we adapt test cricket to then make cricket on an international stage more viable going forward? And they came up with T20 cricket, and now all these T20 leagues around the world that have exploded have done wonders for the game outside of India, because that's never going to be a struggle to sell and market the game in India.
Okay. But so in cricket, you have a format traditionally that lasted over 5 days, could have lasted 35 to 40 hours. In tennis, you have matches that occasionally can go 5 hours.
Yeah, but it's a fairly good blanket comparison between best of 5 Grand Slam matches and Test cricket, I think.
Okay.
And I'm not here to say that should go away. I'm saying that like Patrick, I find it interesting, this discussion of how do we cut through in different ways to make the game more marketable to younger people. I don't think the answer is like tie-break tennis or shortening the matches or whatever. I don't think that's... And nor does he think that that's the case. But now we get into a discussion of the stuff that he's presenting. Is that the way to go?
So
essentially,
the methods are where we diverge, right?
That's what I'm saying.
So you agree with his
macro, but not the micro.
With the assumptions that the argument are coming from.
Yes.
Okay. He said, a quote that really stuck out to me was, "I'm not thinking about the players, I'm thinking about the figures." This is where you lost me. I had trouble keeping up with the interview after that, because it becomes clear more and more that, okay, he wants to get rid of the code of conduct, he wants to get rid of no on-court coaching, he wants to get rid of Hawkeye. Basically, he wants to remove the barriers to like civil interpersonal interaction on the tennis court. And of course, we're here for drama and whatever. You know, you're the biggest drama queen ever and everything. But the code of conduct does also protect people who work in tennis, who are volunteers, who are umpires, line judges. Like, sometimes these people are subjected to ritual abuse, to an absolute deluge of abuse if Fabio Fognini or Jack Sock are on the court, for example. Is that worth the entertainment value for calling female umpires whores and bitches? Like, is that part of sort of the dream tennis world that Patrick is envisioning? He wants drama. He wants players that you don't like, which I get. You can have villainous types of players, but like there's a human element of the sport as well. Like, people are also just trying to do their jobs.
I don't think anybody, including Patrick, would disagree with you with that. There is a distinction, though, between making those protections, keeping those protections, which, let's be honest, are not really doing a good job to begin with.
No.
But also allowing players to show more color on court? Like, is racket abuse necessary? I imagine that's one of the things that come into play here. Is swearing an issue? Like, we're just talking about how folks are all up in arms about Sloane Stephens cussing in press, where there's no kids, they're all grown-ass adults, nobody's being targeted in an aggressive way. She's making a joke about a win, a joyous situation.
Right.
And folks have a problem with that. And I think it ties into this overall uppityness, stuck-upness, uptightness in tennis that doesn't allow the sport to be accessible to younger people. Like, how do you have that kind of ideology of the sport and its purity or whatever translate to a social media generation? It just doesn't. It's incongruent.
But I wonder, and I don't know, the big issue, I think, is there's so little research about what are the sort of things that will allow tennis to garner new fans. Like, is there data about this stuff? And I don't really think there is. It's a lot of people spitballing and saying, well, if we do this, then more young people will watch. And most of those people are over 40 who are saying those things. Like, they presume to know what young people want. I am 33. I don't know what young people want. It doesn't feel that far removed from when I was young, but...
I also think it's entirely possible that tennis itself as a product, the actual game itself, is just not appealing to young people. It's a very niche sport. It's a niche sport for a reason. It's not just because it's inaccessible because of country clubs or because it's rich white people playing it or whatever. The actual sport itself might not be exciting to young people. And how do you fix that?
But there is a lot of money in tennis. Like, some people are making serious money from tennis. Rolex and Porsche and Volvo and all these big companies find it profitable to sponsor tournaments, right? Or else they wouldn't do it. When was tennis one of the major sports in the United States, for example?
The 80s? Late 70s and 80s?
But, no.
Still niche,
but there's the big four sports. And then there's a massive jump to the next sports.
Sure, but everybody of that generation, and I think that's what Patrick was talking about here, as the people who are now 62 going to be 72, all those people knew about the major players in tennis.
Right.
They all followed, all tuned in to watch it.
Does American people know who Serena Williams is? Everybody does. You know, she is the lone breakthrough star with Venus into, like, mass culture in the United States.
It's Serena alone.
Well, back in 2000,
because
it was
a lot
Venus
of those people
Serena.
still can't tell Serena and Venus apart.
Well,
that's just the truth.
That's a whole other thing.
No, but it's the truth.
Right. But I'm saying, like, when was tennis a major sport? Back when the Philadelphia Cricket Club existed, back in the 1800s? Like, listen, I don't think that tennis has been a major sport for a long time.
Forget about major sport. I'm talking about the fact that you had small level tournaments that were actually in the United States and that were actually broadcast on CBS on a weekly basis. Like, tennis could be accessible because people were watching it.
In our lifetime.
And where I think we need to focus our energies, if we are truly concerned about the survival of the sport going forward, is a redistribution of the wealth in tennis. That's the only thing that's going to change anything. And it's not just about getting more viewers, it's about the sustenance and the replenishing of the talent. We've seen what's happened with the ITF and the new changes that have made tennis that much more difficult for players outside rank of the top 100 to survive. What's the good in worrying about a product if there is no product? If there's no players to keep the product strong and entertaining?
Right.
And so we need the powers that be to invest more money in the ground bottom level of the sport. The USTA, if we're talking about from a North American perspective, they need to make sure that younger kids are playing, have access to play the game. You think about where you were as a kid, right? Like, you had interest in basketball growing up. Like, you didn't play. Well, your sister played, but you were interested in it. You followed college sports, but you also had a hoop in your backyard. You're a bit old at this point, but say, you grew up in upstate New York, Carmelo Anthony is the biggest thing at Syracuse. You're all like, wow, that's really cool. The next day you go out and shoot some hoops. You're not good at it, but that's a way to reinforce your interest in the sport. How many kids can go watch Serena Williams play and then like, oh mom, take me to the tennis court, I'm going to go play for a little bit. Like that's where it becomes an issue. And so,
right, but I don't accept that because I think tennis is actually not as expensive as people think it is. It's not as expensive as picking up hockey. Hockey is one of the big four sports, but how many kids can play it? You know how expensive it is?
No, but you're taking for granted that folks have access to courts. Like, you grew up with a lot of courts.
Yes,
you had a court.
Free
courts. You had a court
courts.
at your high school.
Yes.
You had many courts in parks in upstate New York where you could go to. We know that's not the case in Ontario, in Canada. Mm-hmm. And for a lot, especially inner city kids, like, that's not the case. You talk about Serena being this great icon and the most recognizable one, but say, for example, we've seen that there are a lot more black kids playing tennis and coming up through the pro ranks, but if there are these kids in, say, inner cities or more urban areas, where are they going to go play tennis?
Not at the West Side Tennis Club in New York or at the Billie Jean King Tennis Center.
No.
Like, Serena had a father who drove them to the local courts in Compton.
And so my point is, if you want to make the game more accessible to young people, they have to be able to play it. And for that to happen, you have to be able to spread the wealth more from youth sport all the way up to making it possible for kids to progress, not just on a tennis scholarship through college, but then also when they go through that process, and you have somebody like Danielle Collins who makes it out and she's doing well now, but also the folks who have to struggle through the lower level pro leagues and then struggle for 2-3 years and have to be able to still make a living while doing it to then become better.
And Patrick was very critical of the ITF's new transition tour, saying that there has to be this level of professionals who actually have a legitimate chance of reaching that top 100, who can actually spend the time and while making a living and honing their talent, right? Because there are a lot of talented people who have dropped out of tennis because they simply can't afford it, because they can't get people to lend them money over the course of a decade. People who they will owe when they become pros.
There's this romanticizing of young people and what you need to do to get them, be it TV, ratings, sports, or whatever, to get young people on board. But it's more granular than that. They're tangible things that you can do outside of all these grand thought experiments. And it comes down to money, in my mind. And taking the time and the effort and the money and the resources to get people actually on board playing from a young age. That's what I think, anyway.
So where we diverge, where Patrick and I diverge, is that...
I can tell you where you diverge. His comments on the Serena thing. And then also giving this overall impression that you just need to just have a free-for-all and let all manner of things just happen.
Right. So I wouldn't classify myself as a purist, but I do like a lot of things about tennis. That's why I'm drawn to tennis. So when he's asked directly, was Serena's meltdown at the U.S. Open good for tennis? Patrick demurs, and he says, you understand it's a very difficult question to answer for me, but you know the answer. You know the answer. So what is the answer? To me, he's telegraphing here that, yeah, I think it was good for tennis. I think it brought a lot of focus to tennis. He understands, I don't think that he fully understands, but he understands that Serena is one of the most criticized players out there, that eyes are focused on her. I would be surprised if he got the whole American racial dimension of the whole thing. Well, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit.
No, but here's the rub. He may lust after black women, he may marry black women, he may father children with black women, but I don't think he gets the full 100 about what it's like to be black in America as Serena Williams, even though he's her coach.
I don't. I mean, I don't get it. That's where I grew up, but of course I don't get it.
No.
He's a white man from France. How is he supposed to get it? But to say that incident, that grotesque spectacle of the U.S. Open final was even possibly a good thing for tennis, to me that's where the argument falls apart. He thinks that all attention is good attention. All press is good press. And I don't believe that at all.
I think there's some kernel of truth to it. If you can set aside all the fuckery that stemmed from it and all the ways in which it was painful for us and for a lot of the people involved, Serena, not the least of which Naomi. Like, a lot of people were personally hurt and affected by this. I can see how there can be some good coming from the fact that in a society where still the best of women's sports gets the back half of Sports Center.
Right. Even at its most excellent.
At its most excellent. I always tell this story, I'll never forget, as like a 13 to 15-year-old being very interested in the WNBA when it first started. And the Sacramento team, I believe, with Ruthie Bolton Holyfield was in the final. And the WNBA finals had just finished, and I was in Jamaica at the time, and my only access to like live sporting stuff was watching SportsCenter. And I waited and waited and waited and waited and waited until I got like maybe 20 seconds at the back end of the show. Like, that is the disservice and the lip service that women's sport gets. And so when you get somebody like Serena, even in this moment of great turmoil, leading off SportsCenter, all the sports shows, all the cable news shows, like everything, like you are causing that conversation in society. And a byproduct of that is that tennis gets some spotlight. That can have a positive effect. We can't have that happen every week. We can't rely on that to drive the game and build a game. That's just unsustainable.
No. And these are not, these are very surface level things, right? Like, these are not structural changes to who's coming to tennis. This is a what's in the news cycle this week. What is spectacular?
This is a number 15 on the list of things that can help the sport.
I'm trying to take his arguments at face value, like without getting into who he is or my own very biased opinions about it. That's the moment where I was like, wow, I can't separate these things, because he is speaking as Serena's coach. That's his job, like on the international stage, right?
Wearing a lot of hats.
He may have a lot
conflicts.
of different jobs, but his number one job as a celebrity is Serena's coach. And to say that, like, her pain, her very visceral pain, not to say that she made every correct decision in that moment, but
also a pain that he helped cause.
Right, that he thought that was beneficial for the game as a whole was a bit repellent to me. And then to wrap this up in the idea that you believe that coaching should be allowed. So is what you did in the US Open final an act of civil disobedience? Like, just because you believe coaching should be allowed doesn't mean that you should imperil your own players' chances by openly coaching. Like, this is what you did was not an inroad for you to make this grand statement about tennis governance.
No, because
like you altered the course of a match as a coach. And that's not what a coach is supposed to do.
Because also, let's not overlook the fact that this can be viewed as a pivot to then make himself look better and excuse his role in what had happened.
Right. And the other thing is that a lot of people are seeing that this is, he is angling for the job of Nick Kyrgios's coach. He loves Nick. He says that Nick is the only one out there who is capturing this spark, this sort of 1980s John McEnroe magic that Patrick is looking for. He wants that job. So when Serena is done, like, that is the next mountain to climb.
Speaking of adding drama to tennis, Stefanos Tsitsipas, we've come to find out, has blocked Daniil Medvedev on social media.
It is so petty.
Listen,
that he tagged every goddamn player in that Monte Carlo photo, that class photo.
What had happened was, in the lead up to this Monte Carlo event, there was a photo of all the major players, and Stefanos tagged them on social. And for Medvedev, he tagged a fan account instead of Daniil's account. And not in response, but also Medvedev had a similar post, and he tagged everybody except for Stefanos. And so somebody asked him, why you say vamos?
Why you don't accept us?
And he was like, well, I can't tag somebody who's blocked me.
Oh, girl.
And that was the tea. That was the tea. And, this is a long-running percolating.
It's a feud.
It's a feud. Yeah, it is. It is. And I'm looking forward to Ryan Murphy's take on it in a few years. But if you recall, one of my favorite moments from last year was when Medvedev told Stefanos to, why don't you shut your fuck up?
Yes.
Like, to this day, I still say that in my regular life.
It's, oh my God.
It's too good. And so we're still getting fallout from this, and I'm living for it. I just love it. Bottle that to promote tennis.
Patrick must love that.
A couple of non-tennis specific stuff before we finish with the return of the rant, which we teased on social media. First up, Tiger Woods won the Masters yesterday. Listen, I lived when I had just a horrible shift at work yesterday. Being a Sunday, it was terrible. But I snuck away to check my phone, and I saw you tweeting about the Masters.
Can you believe I was watching golf?
Not just yesterday, you were watching it on Saturday.
That's true.
You've been following this tournament, and I play golf. I grew up watching golf. Greg Norman was my first golfing hero, and part of the reason why I love such tragic messes in all of sport because of the 96 Masters.
And Republicans.
I am floored.
Oh, really? You can't handle the truth?
Listen, I get the problems. Okay, I do. Let's not pretend that I don't. But you've been mostly steadfast outside of thirsting after a golfer here or there.
Brooks Koepka?
That's
Call me.
That's not even true, because you grew up playing golf. You golfed with your grandfather and your grandmother.
But I wasn't very good.
You were in like some kind of junior league.
I didn't watch it.
Still.
I really was not very good. Yeah. I played at the par 3 course. This wasn't like a club. This was the par 3 public course in my hometown, okay? Don't make me sound bougie. It literally cost like $8 to play around.
Would it be fair to say you enjoyed playing golf more than watching it?
Sure. Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And I have good memories of playing with my grandparents.
Okay.
Definitely.
Now, Tiger Woods, he is 11 years later removed from winning his last major title, wins the Masters again. And it caused a lot of conversation.
Mm-hmm. So I was kind of rooting for Molinari because he's Italian. My recently departed grandma was hyped about him winning the U.S. Open last year. It was the U.S. Open, right? One of the majors last year. Molinari won. But it was stacked. This tournament on Sunday, at one point there were like 5 people tied for the lead. And
the entire week, it wasn't just Sunday. The entire week, the leaderboard was lit.
So Molinari hit the water, and then things just went south. And then it became clearer and clearer that this was Tiger's to lose. He had a 2-stroke lead, and this is happening. Mm-hmm. Because he got himself into a few tight spots in the, what do they call that?
Bunkers?
No, like the
rough?
The second 9 holes?
The back 9.
The back 9. In the back 9, he hit a few spectators, was in the rough. How was he going to get out of this? And every time he did. It was really exciting to watch.
The Masters, for all its incredible historical flaws, is my favorite tournament.
Oh, the Confederate Tournament.
It is. Because the beauty of the course cannot be denied.
True.
And Amen Corner, that stretch of 3 holes on the back 9 where the tournament rests on those 3 holes. And that's where you saw Molinari hit the ball in the water on 12, where Koepka went into the drink as well on 12. It all happens. Like that tournament, the familiarity of it where everybody knows what's happening, but the course itself is still so unique and primed to host this kind of a shootout. It's fun. Again, I get it, that it's all kinds of fucked up. I do.
No, I think there's something exciting about this Augusta Country Club, apoplectic about Tiger.
Which is great.
A lot of white people going crazy with excitement. applauding for a black man.
That will always be the legacy of Tiger Woods. You have various black athletes who've made serious historical, socio-political contributions to the fabric of the United States. But Tiger Woods is unique in that regard because that's what he's done.
Right.
And that's because he's done it in this sport. You'd say that maybe you could think that Serena should have been able to do the same thing in tennis because it's another lily white sport. But Serena's blackness has been far more unapologetic than Tiger's.
Most definitely.
Most definitely. That
Serena
said,
has been more actively revolutionary.
that said, Tiger, when he was a junior, this was circulating in the last 24 hours. He was asked, what is the tournament that you're most looking forward to winning, or something in golf that you most want to do? And he said, I want to win the Masters because of how they treat black people. As a kid, where did that Tiger go?
Wow.
And I can't help but think that that's where the loss of his father at a fairly young age,
Yeah.
coinciding with his astronomical rise into wealth and the upper classes, he kind of lost his way. Not to make any excuses, and I'm not one here. Like, listen, I spent the majority of my 20s hating Tiger Woods and like hoping every fucking shot went into the water.
You were also a contrarian at heart.
Yep.
You were anti-Graf, anti-Federer.
I still remember rooting for Rocco Mediate at the 2008 US Open, the site of Tiger's last major before this one. But again, in keeping with the whole underdog, calamitous sporting narrative, this is what's kind of drawn me back in, because Tiger's been through a lot. That said, he is still very chummy with, as someone reminded me from listening to a previous episode, the person I termed the pumpkin fuck.
We were trying to figure out who that was.
This is like one of my favorite parts, when folks discover the podcast, and I don't know how you have the desire to go back and listen to tennis moments frozen in time from like months and years ago at this point, but then come back to tell us stuff that we said years ago. And I'm like, girl, I struggle to remember things I said 15 minutes ago.
That was a good one. Can't remember what it was about. But Tiger won his last major in 2008. Do you know who else won his or her last major in 2008? It's coming. It is coming.
Listen, I can't even allow myself
Venus
to
Ebony
think about
Star
that.
Williams. Serena tweeted that she is hugely inspired by what Tiger did. I would like to see it, to quote the great Monique.
Tiger is an incredibly polarizing figure, and that was on display yesterday with the reactions to him winning. And it's, for as much as he is inspirational and a lightning rod for comeuppedness within black communities, you can still see how black people reject him. You can still see how white people reject him. People reject his philandering. People reject his associations and embracing of Trump. His apoliticalness. There's a lot of fraught with Tiger Woods. But yesterday was something that I think was cool to experience.
Yeah. And it was a historic sporting moment. This is your portion of the podcast. This is very macho, non-tennis sport things going on.
No, but these are people who are giving us the non-macho part of the macho sport.
Two of the all-time greats in the NBA are retiring this year, Dirk Nowitzki and Dwayne Wade.
They've already retired. The regular season is done. Neither is in the playoffs.
Really? Dirk Nowitzki, a German basketball player, a German former junior tennis player. He's been a great champion of tennis over his career.
He's somebody who was a nationally ranked junior player in tennis before pivoting exclusively to basketball. And every year he has a celebrity tennis tournament that's very successful. He's always tweeting about tennis as well. So there's that symbiotic nature between these two sports overlapping. And then also Dwayne Wade, this week as well, in conjunction with his retirement, he had this Budweiser commercial that came out that highlighted some of the ways in which he has been a true advocate for downtrodden folks. Of course, the intertwining with the commercial aspect of a big company.
So
Takes a little bit of the
commercial.
sheen off of it.
It was strange.
But he participated without knowing what exactly was going to come of it. So there's a smidgen of authenticity still left in there. But damn if I did not shed some tears watching that.
Right. It doesn't make you a better, more politically aware person if you were not moved emotionally by that commercial.
What it does highlight is that Dwayne Wade is part of this class of new age, soon to be retired basketball players who, for the first time, as a collective whole, changed the face of the NBA. They transitioned the NBA from the apolitical Michael Jordan, Republicans buy sneakers into a group of NBA players who were unapologetically black and together decided that they run this league. And not only that, but they're going to use their platforms to collectively help black people and oppressed people and people who've had horrible things happen to them through their privilege and their platform.
Mm-hmm. LeBron James has been a leader in that.
The three of them, LeBron, Carmelo, and Dwayne, have done great things.
Chris Paul, who was also part of the Trayvon Martin photo shoot.
And these are just the biggest names.
Right,
It runs much deeper than that. And so this commercial highlighted the work that Dwayne has done in his life through basketball.
And there's also the fact that he married a famous dark-skinned black woman. And they have really one of the most aspirational relationships there is in celebrity culture. Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade, who have tried so many times. Like, Gabrielle has finally had a child after suffering many miscarriages. Like, there's just so much to love about this family. She has taken Dwayne's sons as her own. They're one big family.
And then, this past week, Dwayne has these Insta stories where he's not able to be there in Miami at the parade, but he is celebrating the fact that his 11 or 12-year-old son is marching in his first Pride parade and letting us know that his son is gay and that he is proud of him.
And his whole family is there.
Yeah.
The kid's older brother is there in South Beach at the Pride parade. Gabrielle is there. The baby. Was the baby there?
I don't know.
Did you all see that video of Dwayne with the little girl? And she kept sneezing. He says, "Bless you, mama."
I didn't
Bless
see
you,
that,
Mama.
no.
The cutest thing in the world. But, I mean, this is new, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is new. Seeing a major black athlete bucking these stereotypes, the racist stereotypes of the black community, being a supportive father of a queer and or questioning son. This kid is young, right? The world didn't know. The world didn't have to know that this kid identifies as gay. But there he is at Miami Pride, out there, brave enough to tell his parents and the whole world who he is. Because it's not just his parents. He's Dwayne Wade's son. It has to be the whole world, too.
I can only tell by watching some of the reaction to this that this is still not just a stereotype, which is also why this makes this so much more meaningful coming from Dwayne. And I understand that that may be a fraught comment to a lot of folks, and I understand if you take issue with that. Maybe I'm not in tune enough to be able to opine in that way. But there's a lot at play as to why this is a big deal.
Right.
And this segues into the return of the Rant.
The Rant, which is not the read.
No,
It's the Rant.
but the read has a rant, don't they?
They have a read.
Oh, they have a read. Oh, okay. So we're not stealing
it's
stuff.
It's not copyright infringement.
Okay.
So the Rant is based on the idea that young children cannot possibly identify as not straight.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of people are very upset, saying that young people cannot possibly know that they're gay that they're queer, that they do not identify as the gender they were assigned at birth. Now, how could you possibly know that?
The idea here is, what are they doing? What are the Wades doing, having this kid proclaim himself as being gay and celebrating it when he's just 11 years old?
And so the insinuation is that there's something unsavory going on, that there is some outside influence, that in the worst iterations, that there's abuse even.
Or why not just wait and see if they'll eventually change persuasions?
Right.
Find their true
this a
selves.
phase?
Maybe in 2 years they will like women.
And I don't doubt that there are cases where there are kids who are like, I think maybe I'm gay. And then they decide, no, actually, I don't think I am. Like, it probably does happen. Don't you think? It's rare.
Sure.
Because why would you dabble in that? Like, why would you expose yourself to that sort of persecution?
No, but the point is that these kids are 11 years old, and that's the beauty of it.
And the thing is, most 11-year-olds are not actually sexual.
No.
Right? So when you and I, as an example, were 7, 8 years old, you're not thinking about sex, but you may be thinking about attention from men or from boys. And it's not about sex at all.
No, it's about being able to have a level of comfort and safety and security to explore these ideas and not have it become a repressive, oppressive thing that potentially has long-lasting psychological effects throughout your life.
Right.
Like, that's what it's about. And so what if Dwayne's son in 2 years says, like, well, yeah, maybe I don't really like that boy that I was crushing on next door, and I'm not really gay.
Maybe I just really wanted to be his friend. And traditional masculinity didn't allow me to express my feelings in a way that wasn't bound up in sexual identity, right?
And the worst that happened was that I was able to show support for a group of downtrodden folks historically, for me to gain some understanding of a whole different group of people that a lot of folks are taught to fear and despise, to have a sense of engagement with my own sexuality and feelings and conceptualization of my own masculinity, to then be able to situate who I am. Like, that's something that's incredibly empowering. Can you imagine being able to go through that and then come out as straight, and then what kind of straight man will you be?
Right.
Going forward?
You'll be the best kind.
The best kind of gay. You will not be an incel.
The best kind of straight.
Yes, the best kind of straight. You will not be an incel.
You will not be a hotep.
Or a blincel, as we've come to see today.
Apparently that's a thing. They're all part of the cut from the same cloth. People who hate women and who hate effeminacy.
When was the first time that you realized that you were attracted to a boy in some level?
This is getting very personal.
This is different from your rhetorical questions.
Right. So this is not about sex. This is about like infatuation.
Yeah,
right?
the first time you're like,
as a child.
Oh,
of
like,
course.
What's going on here?
Aladdin. And I saw Aladdin in its first theatrical run. Thank you. I'm old as fuck.
I still remember being in grade 6, and I remember exactly the name of the boy, and it was like, oh, what's going on?
Don't say it.
I'm not going to say the name. I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But at that age, at that young age, you don't know what that means. And so if you don't necessarily know what that means, having somebody who's so, in this case, happens to be so famous and so supportive can only be a good... I don't understand how this is a bad thing unless it's coming from a place of your own internalized bigotry.
And there is like a group of people out here, very vocal on social media, who are afraid of sexualizing children. But they're only afraid of sexualizing children if those kids are queer.
Yeah.
Right? Because
these are the same folks who are like, oh my God, look at 2-year-old little Jimmy. He's so into 2-year-old Betty. Like, they're going to be married.
Just like the language that we use with children, with little kids. Babies are he's flirting with her.
He's such a ladies' man.
He's 6 months old.
Yeah.
He's not flirting with anybody. Like, we, queer people, are not the people who brought sex into
No.
the equation here.
This is straight people
Right?
causing
This
all
is
this
the
fuckery.
language of adult romance
Mm-hmm.
applied to children.
Yep. Why is it okay for Dwayne's son to be a ladies' man at 11 years old and not be
A man's man.
a man's man? Or
Right? So, like, that idea triggers pedophilia.
yeah,
But the opposite, the more normal sexuality is like, oh, that's fine.
no, but
you know?
embedded in that normal air quote sexuality is ownership of women's bodies. Right? Because for you to be a ladies' man at 11 years old, you're having a certain sense of entitlement to women's bodies.
Well, yeah, it's like you are getting what you deserve. It's like your birthright, right?
And so this rant is an unfettered appreciation and celebration of Dwayne Wade, Gabrielle Union, and that entire family for putting queer positivity into the world.
And because they know that life is dangerous for queer kids of color, period.
Thank you for listening to episode 154. My name is Jonathan.
Let's just breathe for a second. That's emotional. Thank you for listening. This episode was called I'm Tired of Fucking Losing.
I mean, the ethos of the body serve is just, I'm tired of all this fucking shit. Whatever the shit is. And so to end this episode on such an uplifting note, you always talk about how you struggle through the minutia of the tennis details and you enjoy the more, socio-expansive stuff.
Socio-expansive.
I just coined something.
Okay.
That's how I felt this episode. Like the first few segments were a bit of a struggle for me.
We are a tennis podcast, so you have to talk about that stuff.
We did, yeah, but I made sure to find a tenuous connection at best from Dirk to Dwayne to the Rant. And as always, you can find me on Twitter at tennis_John.
I'm James at ElliotJMR.
2 L's, 2 T's. The Body Serve is at The Body Serve on Twitter as well as on Instagram. We have to get our shit together in the next few weeks because we're going away.
We've been at a very leisurely pace, bi-weekly. But
which is not the end of the world.
No, it's not, especially at this point in the calendar.
I don't think we've cheated folks for content, but we have this vacation coming up where we have to make sure that there's still content coming out.
Yeah. So we will be in Rome for a brief part of the Rome tournament, but we'll be away for about 2 weeks.
We're hoping to maybe have like some kind of non-live tennis episode that we can put out before we go, and then maybe have something on the road somewhere.
Like syndication. Like we've recorded it in advance.
It's going to take some planning. We have to get on that. And then bear with us. If we do put out something on the road, it will not be our usual typical audio standard. Just saying. Thanks for listening. Hit us up with a review in whatever platform you use or download or stream podcasts. Chief among these, iTunes. That really helps promote the show when people search for tennis podcasts. Till next time.
Thank you. Thank you very much.